welcome back to the Gentleman's Garage, and this is video 3 of 3 of our infamous, I guess you'd call it, flood video. As you guys have seen the 2 previous videos, the first video we came out, there'd been a video that we had made of our garage back in 2017 after Hurricane Harvey had flooded the garage. I sent it to the bike builder that was going to assess whether we could rebuild either one of the bikes that got destroyed in the flood. I was just trying to show him how high the water had gotten up on the bikes. It was the only video I had at the time because we were going through, we weren't even in the house at the time because of the floodwaters, and he ended up posting it online and it went viral. And now every time there's another hurricane or natural disaster, some knucklehead somewhere grabs that video, reposts, and tries to claim it's wherever the most recent natural disaster is. So to put an end to all that, we came forward to listen. That was our garage well before we were on social media. It was never supposed to be shared out there. But here we are now. We are now part of the social media community, bringing content about our collection and our experiences with the car to you guys. And we thought, let's put that out there, let you guys know the true story, what really happened behind the famous flood garage, supercar garage, whatever video. And in the first video, I said that there were 2 cars that we immediately brought back to the collection. I shouldn't say immediately. One got back immediately. The other one took a few years. But here we are. The second video, we talked about our Ford GT. That was the very first car that we replaced after the flood. And like I said, I think it's one of the greatest analog driver's cars of all time. Today, we are going to talk about the second car that we eventually got back to our collection. This car, this is the 2015 458 Speciale Aperta. This is the special limited edition variant of the 458. They only made 499 total production of this car. About 120, maybe 122 ever came to the United States. I automatically knew there was at least one less because mine had completely flooded. And then we started searching again for another one. And we knew it was a car that we really, really loved. Very, very special car. Come to find out now that we see where what Ferrari's producing today, it makes this car that much more special. We'll get into that in a second. But it was because the car is so rare, and a lot of the guys that owned them loved them, probably for the same reasons that we were very much in love with this car. They weren't selling them, and so finding another car that was been well maintained, well documented, the right spec that we would fall in love and really enjoy the spec, and then of course the right deal. That actually ended up taking almost 4 years, believe it or not. And how we ended up finding this car was completely crazy, completely unexpected for sure. So we've been searching for another 458 Speciale Aperta. In fact, I love the 458 so much, I went and bought another 458 Spider just to still have a 458 in our collection. That's how fantastic the 458 is in and of itself. And then the Speciale, I'm going to go on record and say this is the greatest modern day Ferrari. So greatest Ferrari of modern times. At least the last 25 years, I would say this is the greatest car. And I say that up through and including what you see just behind me, our SF90 Spider. As you guys know, we have the 296 GTS, the Pure Sangue, we got the F80 on order, all the things. This right here still stands alone. This is the king of them all, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is. But this car, how we finally ended up coming to get it, was not through brokers. It wasn't through Ferrari dealerships. It wasn't through Bring a Trailer. It wasn't through Auto Trader online. It wasn't through friends of friends of friends that knows a guy that's got one that might be ready to sell it. None of those traditional lines that usually lead you to a car that you've been chasing for some time, especially when you're chasing the rare stuff. Usually it's one of those paths that gets you where you want to be. None of those. It was a 992 Turbo S Cabriolet that got me there, believe it or not. Yeah, we had taken delivery of one of the very first 992 Turbo S Cabriolets to ever come into the United States. We spec'd it, ordered it, ended up getting stuck at customs for months because the EPA and the guys in Germany were still at one another over the whole Dieselgate thing. So EPA, everybody knows it was intentionally holding cars at the port, not letting them clear customs just to kind of thumb it back to Porsche, if you will. And that car sat at port for almost 5 months, believe it or not. And again, had that not happened, I would not have been led to this car. So many things happened for me to get led to this car. So we get the 992 Turbo S, fantastic car. I did not know that those front air vents on the front end of the car are active. They open and close depending on the aerodynamic needs of the car, depending on what you're doing and driving. We have the toll tag in Texas, and you usually get a little sticker, you put it by your rearview mirror and it reads a toll tag. But electronics on these more modern cars distort that or mess it up, and the toll tags can't read the sticker. So then you got to get a toll bar and then put it somewhere on the front of the car so that you can go through tolls and it reads it. I zip tied it to the front air vents because they were in the open position. I thought that's how they stayed. I didn't know that they closed at certain periods of time. And I'm going down the road, sure enough, they're trying to activate. I don't know that. All I know is I got a check engine light coming on. Brand new car. I pull into the Porsche dealership. This is mid-December, a few years ago, and they're trying to check the car, see what's going on with the check engine light. And they realized it was that the vents were active. It through a code. They plug the computer in, tells them what the problem is. Funny part about that is they kept telling me about a 458 Speciale upstairs. They didn't say a PERT number one. That would have been a key word, but it was upstairs. But number two, and very important factor, as I said, this was mid-December, which if you know me, I've already blown my car budget for the year because that's just what I do with cars. And I was absolutely, unequivocally not buying another car before the end of the year. So I didn't even want to go upstairs and see it. The guys at Porsche knew I'd been after one for a few years. They kept telling me, Louis, you got to see the car, you got to see the car. And I'm like, guys, it's not happening. I'm not going upstairs. That's where they keep their special stuff. Not going to happen. Fix the Turbo S and get me on my way. And they kept taking longer and longer than what I know it needed to fix that issue. It was a very simple issue to fix. Finally, begrudgingly, I start walking up the stairs. I get about 3 steps from the very top and I can see this car sitting there and immediately just fell in love with the spec. And the top was up, but I saw the roof line, so I knew it was the hardtop convertible. It was the Aperta. I'm not even to the top step. I pull up my phone, I text my wife, I just bought another car. And I hadn't even got up to this car yet. So walking to the car, I'm absolutely just dropped dead in love with this Bianco Italia white color. It's this pearl white, absolutely stunning. The red and black stripes that they did. And then the way they did the interior, mostly leather, and they offset it with some red Alcantara. Gives really nice movement on the interior. The white stitching, white piping. It's just, in my opinion, it's one of the sexiest specs I've ever seen. We ended up driving off in a car that I absolutely was not expecting time, but it was the perfect car. What I thought was one of the most beautiful specs that I'd ever seen. And quite honestly, it ended up being a really good deal at the time. And now, since then, this car has more than doubled in value from what I paid for it. I don't know, I think we've had this car maybe roughly 4 years. So had it not been for a Porsche 992 Turbo S Cabriolet, I would not have, back in our garage, this gorgeous 458 Speciale Aperta. As I said, I think this car is the greatest modern Ferrari of the last 25 years. Let's get this out on the road and let me show you why. You gotta review this car with the top down. The Speciale Coupe is amazing. It's the same car essentially, but with a hard top. For me, had to be the Aperta or Spider or open top, whatever you want to call it, because it just gives you so much more exposure to the elements, get to experience so much more of what's going on around you. But most importantly, oh, you get to hear that V8. And this is the end of it. This car right here is the very last time Ferrari will ever make another engine that sounds like this. This car is totally stock. I did not have to modify the exhaust because it is that darn good just the way that it is. This engine won Engine of the Year, I think 3 or 4, maybe 5 years in a row, something like that. I think it was 4 years in a row. As I talk about all the time, the perfect amount of horsepower for on the road, real world utilization where you can use all of the car, you can enjoy all of the car, is between 500 and 600 horsepower. And this car is at the peak of that, 597 horsepower. So you're at the top of that range that you can actually use on the road. You can get the most enjoyment out of it. You can rev out each gear, have a hell of a time with this car, and it's not overpowered. But yeah, this is the end of the era for the natural aspirated V8s for Ferrari. And this car, I gotta hand it to Ferrari. They pulled out all the stops. The thing you get with this car, the first two things, every time I get back into this car, I'm reminded, first and foremost, how absolutely glorious that flat plane crank, natural aspirated V8 is. It's unbelievable. There's nothing else like it. Secondly, is the handling. This car handles, the handling is as razor sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. This car, when you get in this car, even if you're an average driver, within 20 minutes, 30 minutes of feeling the handling of this car, you instantly feel like there's nothing you can't do in this car. Nothing at all. It is the sharpest handling, sharpest response car of any car I've ever driven, of any age, across any brand. The closest thing that comes to this car, and it's not even a fair comparison, is my Ferrari Challenge race car. And that's not a road legal car. You know, I talk about the Ford GT, how it's greater than the sum of its parts. When you put it all together, it's this magical, amazing analog driving recipe of a car, and it absolutely is. This car, each one of its parts are absolutely amazing. The best of the best. We've talked about the engine, the responsiveness, the incredible sound from a stock exhaust in this car. I can't imagine ever putting an aftermarket exhaust in this car, because this tone is absolutely perfect. It completely, totally matches the emotional responsiveness that you get out of the way this car handles and drives. And then you get into the steering. And I talk very heavily about the steering of the Ford GT, and steering is such a big thing. Oh, if this guy would get out of my way, I would just open this thing up and send it. We'll get to that in a moment for sure. But I talk about steering a lot in a car, because that's what connects you not only with the car, but it's your connection with the driving surface that you're driving on, the pavement. And when you get some of these newer cars, you know, they've gotten so electronic and whatnot that you lose that direct connection with the pavement, and so you don't have quite a good a feel as to what the traction's doing with the surface. How is the grip of the surface of the road? Are my tires up to temperature? Are they grabbing yet? Am I starting to push a little bit in the corners? Or same thing with the rear end. Is the rear end, or those tires, if I'm really on the edge of the car, are the tires getting to the limits of their traction ability, and am I about to lose the rear end of the car? And obviously, this is a rear-wheel driven car, so yeah, it rotates fantastic for sure through corners, but this car is razor sharp, which also means it's spiky. It is tail happy. Any really razor sharp handling, cornering, thank you, sir. People love the car. Rear-wheel driven car is going to be tail happy. That's the characteristic of it. Even in the race cars, the more you sharpen up the nose of the car, the more you can bring the rear end around. They get more spiky, but that's where you can really turn amazing times through corners, in and out of corners, and lap times on track. But the steering is where that connection really begins, and you got to understand that from a real driver standpoint. This is how you communicate with the car, and how the car is in contact with the road and the driving surface that you're on. And so it's super important. And this car is good. It's the best ever. It's absolutely the best steering rack ever. It is still light. It's very fast steering rack, as is per usual for a Ferrari, but it's still got enough responsiveness and communication with the front end. It doesn't have too much electronics between this steering wheel and those tires up front that you lose all feel of what's going on. I can't say that about modern cars at all. So you get back in this car, immediately you're like, wow, why do I feel like I really know why I'm really connected to the car? Right here, it's because of the steering rack, and it is the best I've ever driven. And then this car it's the end, not only is the end of an era where we still had natural aspirated cars, but this and then the 488 Pista is it for this interior and this infotainment system. And you know, listen, I get it. You want your Bluetooth, you want a great sounding stereo, you want Apple CarPlay or Android Play or whatever it's called. I don't. Not in these cars. I don't want any of that garbage. I don't want any electronic interference. I don't want touchscreen buttons or haptic feedback buttons, I should say. I want what's important to me. I want to know my temperature gauge. I want to know my oil pressure, my oil temp. I want to know my RPMs. That's it. I'm focused on my driving here, and that's what this car is about. It's not about, you know, go get an SUV if you want to know all that, or you want all those extra features, and I get it. That's a road touring car. Go do that. That's great. When you get in this, you want to drive this car to the height of your ability, because I guarantee you, you're probably not going to reach the height of this car's ability. It's just beyond even advanced drivers. What this car can do in a professional driver's hands is truly phenomenal. It's unmatched or unbeaten by anything else, by any other car maker. That is how phenomenally great this car is. And when I get in it, that's what I'm after. That's what I'm chasing. That's what I'm focused on. That's what brings the joy driving this car, not a stupid Apple CarPlay. I don't want to, I mean, this car does have a radio. I couldn't care less if it didn't have a radio in it. I want to hear that exhaust note. There's nothing more glorious than listening to that thing as I work and rev through the gears. So this and the 488P is the end of that before they got into all the new infotainment system and all that stuff. I'm personally not a fan. I want to get in these cars and I want to drive them to their very limit. And this car is all about the driving, for sure. It's light, it's razor sharp, and this is it. I mean, every time I get back in this car, I'm reminded that all the new stuff that I'm playing with and that comes out and we take delivery of, they're not better than this car. They're absolutely not. This car reminds you why it is the best of modern times, for sure. And I think as time and history goes on, and I think we're kind of at the precipice of that right now, where people are beginning to realize, I don't want all these electronics, and I don't want hybrid systems in my car, at least not in my high performance supercars. That's not what we're buying those cars for. It's not what you want in those cars. They don't enhance their ability. They enhance 0 to 60 times. They may enhance quarter-mile times, but not my driver engagement and joy of these cars. And that's what we're doing with these cars on the road. We're trying to drive and enjoy them on the road as they're meant to be driven, by way of which they're built. Oh, here we go. Even on the downshifts. Oh, who needs a radio? Are you kidding me? A radio? What song's gonna come on the radio that sounds better than that? I mean, just what? No. It's so good, I don't even want to continue to talk about the car. I just want to enjoy it. And I've owned this car for, I don't know, 4 years now, and every time I get into it, I don't care about anything else. I just want to drive and enjoy this car, because this is as good as it gets. You know, I told you guys I found this at the Porsche store. Sales manager got in the car with me. We took it for a test drive. And of course, I already knew how the car drove and handled, but I hadn't been in one in a few years. It took us a while to find this car after ours flooded during Hurricane Harvey. It took me, I think, three years, maybe 4 years, 4 years, I think, before we found this car. We got in. Now, mind you, he's a sales manager of a very large Porsche store. He's been on 1 million test rides in cars. We got in this car, and I got on the freeway. Luckily, it was light traffic, and absolutely opened this car up and really started pushing it. He told me it's the greatest test drive he's ever been on in his entire life. A little bit about the gearbox, you know, twin clutch gearbox. It's razor sharp, razor fast. No matter how hard I've pushed this car, it's never got quirky on me. It's never failed. It's never chugged. It's never made an awkward gear shift ever. And as you guys know, I drive these cars. I drive them as hard as I possibly can when I'm on public roads, and and I track my cars as well. This particular one I've not been able to get on track, although I have tracked specialty coupes before, and even with them, pushing them as hard as I can on track, they've never disappointed. They've never made a sluggish or awkward gear change whatsoever. So the gearbox, it's fantastic. You know, people might argue that, or Ferrari would say that, you know, the gearboxes in the newer cars since then are point whatever milliseconds faster on the upshifts or the downshifts. That's beyond what the human senses can defer between, you know, milliseconds of timing, because I'll tell you, I get into, you know, 296 or a brand new SF90 and I can't feel that they shift any quicker than this car is right here. It is fantastic. It is just wonderful. Oh, let's get on a couple of roads here. And there's just nothing corners like this car. Just nothing. I mean, oh, baby, just, it's almost too easy. It's just so good. Hitting the apex of a corner, oh, God. Oh, on those downshifts, just, I'm sorry. I'm so caught up in the driving experience of a car that I've driven 1,000 times. I'm having a hard time continuing to communicate with you guys what this car is all about and what it's like to go through. And sometimes, hey, shut up and let y'all listen. Let you see for yourselves. This car will be in my collection for the rest of my life. I've even joked around with my kids that, hey, y'all can bury Dad in this car. That is how much I absolutely love this car. It's perfect in every way. Throttle response, handling, braking, the gearbox, the responsiveness of the engine, the sound of the engine. It is absolutely perfect in every way. A couple of things that will very much surprise you about this car. I have road tripped this car. My wife and I took it to caught a couple of road trips throughout the state. Believe it or not, incredible amount of storage capacity up in the front boot. A lot. We're able to get 2 full suitcases and another duffel bag up there, no problem. The other thing that'll really blow your mind is even with the driver and 3-wood in your golf bag, if you notch these seats forward just a little bit, this shelf right back behind me, you can stack 2 sets of golf clubs on its sides. I know that because my wife and I road tripped this to a golf resort about 4.5 hours away, and we had both sets of our golf clubs in the back, 2 suitcases in the front, and then we were even had the ability to throw a few bottles of wine to have overnight. We have some of our favorite bottles of wine there with us in this car, no problem. And I'll tell you, not only does it have massive cargo space, but you hop in this car and hit this little button right here, bumpy road mode, really smooths out the suspension of the car, and it goes over bumps and imperfections of the road extraordinarily well. So, man, this is the car. This is it. You can get in this car and you can spend an entire weekend routing out and do it. Get in this car and drive it. You know, I personally have just under 7,000 miles in this car right now, 6,934. Something this good, don't let it sit in your garage. Get it out, make a road trip, make a weekend of it, drive it 4, 5, 6 hours away. You can do that. You're gonna have 4 or 5 hours of your absolute best driving experience possible of anything that's been made. This is the best driving experience you get of it. I don't want to limit that. If I can get in this car and come up with a reason to do this for 5 or 6 hours, I'm absolutely going to do it. You got so much storage capacity. Take it somewhere. Put your wife in the car. Make a weekend out of it. You're going to have an amazing time driving this car. She's going to have a good time as well, if she's cool. My wife is, so I'm really lucky in that regard. And take this thing somewhere. You got all the cargo space that you need. Enjoy for the weekend. Put the miles on it and just enjoy one of the best ever Ferraris to come out of Maranello, because that's what this car is intended to do. It's just bring you the absolute ultimate driving experience possible, you know, and that's really, I think, what I'm finding myself talk so much about with this car. I could get into all the technical stuff about horsepower and torque and you know, the different gear ratios on this versus a base model 458, the increased compression ratio of the engine where they squeezed more horsepower out of it, and you know, we could talk about the suspension setup of this car, not only versus a stock, or excuse me, standard 458, but also into the 488s, the F8s, and now even the 296s that have come after that. But that's not the point of this car at all. This car, its setup and its balance is absolutely perfect. You're not thinking about all those technical things. You're not thinking about the mechanical differences. All you can think about is, this is the most incredible car I've ever driven in my life, and you just can't stop doing this. I gotta be careful. There is a constable back several car lengths behind me. I can't wait for him to turn away. Oh, I can't just, oh, you just want to send this car over and over again. And you just, you know, when we took the road trip, it was up to Austin. There's some amazing switchbacks up through Austin. I forget the name of the driving route, but everybody's out there. A lot of motorcyclists are out there as well. And this is a car that you literally plan a road trip around, finding roads with a lot of switchbacks, a lot of turns, a lot of cornering. That's just going to allow you to, you know, put the nose into the corner, find that apex, hammer on the accelerator, come flying out of that corner. Bridge, had to do it. Y'all know the rules. And just enjoy the greatest cornering driving experience of any car over and over and over again. Because I promise you, it never gets old. The enthusiasm and excitement that this car invokes in the human being, especially a car guy. This is as good as it gets. I mean, listen, the F40, the F50, the LaFerrari, you know, R3 Halo cars that we have in the collection are all phenomenal in their own right. Absolutely. You know, the F40 obviously is the ultimate exhilarating driving car, but you're not going to road trip that 4 or 5 hours. You're not. You're going to get in it. You're going to drive it like a maniac, because it's going to just continue to encourage you to do that. And you're going to do that for, you know, about an hour. Same with the F50. The LaFerrari is phenomenal, and it handles very similar to this car, but it's got almost 1,000 horsepower. And that's up in that range where, look, I love the LaFerrari. Boy, do I love it. I'm not going to go as hard on public roads and in corners in the LaFerrari with 1,000 horsepower at the rear wheel as I will this car. And that's why I talk about the perfect amount of horsepower is between that 500 and 600 horsepower range for on the road. I will hit an apex in the LaFerrari, and I will roll on the power coming out of it. But I'm not going to hit that apex and just go flat out coming out of a corner. It's just way too much horsepower to consistently get it down on road surfaces with a high degree of confidence that you're not going to lose the rear end on that car. This car is right at the top of the limit, where that is, when you do it, when you hit a corner and you hit that apex, and as you come out of it and you swing the car wide coming out of that corner, you're going to put your foot all the way down, and she's going to stick, but it's going to be right on the very edge. Right on the very edge, where for a split second you're going to go, okay, we made it. And then you're like, let's do it again, over and over and over. But it's right on the edge. Anything more than what this power plant puts down, you're just not going to have the confidence to take it to the edge on public roads. You're just not going to do it. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of sad to me as a driver. What's the point of having a car that's got so much horsepower that I don't get to use it all? Why have it? You know, I get it. You know, guys that get hung up on, you know, 0 to 60 times and quarter mile times. cool. You're not doing any of that on the real roads anyway. And by the way, 597 horsepower, this car is doing 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Now, that's perfect launch, perfect conditions. But I'm telling you right now, you're not going to feel the difference on the road in the real world of a car that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds versus a car that does it in 2.5. You're not going to feel the difference at all. I think the F40, Ferrari caught lightning in a bottle. And I think with this car was the next time that they really put it all together in perfect harmony and got every element of the car perfectly right. I don't own an Enzo. I've never driven an Enzo. I know that the transmission's much earlier F1 technology, so it's going to be nowhere near as fast as this. That much I do know. That is kind of the weak point of that car. And then I've got the LaFerrari, which is this car kind of on steroids, if you think about it. It handles very similar to this car. It's from the same era. This is 2014, LaFerrari's 2015. And actually, I correct myself. I believe this car is a 2015 as well, so they're both 2015 cars. But with the LaFerrari, that's 1,000 horsepower, rear wheel. You gotta really be in the right place, and you gotta have safety and runoff in case you do lose that rear end of that car to really extract every bit of its ability in cornering and in its handling. Not with this car. You get to use every bit of it on the road all the time. And so you never stop grinning ear to ear. You never stop squeezing out every ounce of RPM out of every single gear. I mean, this car revs to 9,000 RPM. In a V8, 9,000 RPM with an amazing gearbox, incredible sound, perfect setup of suspension and steering that with the end results of the single greatest handling, overall handling Ferrari I've ever driven. I mean, look, this car handles, let's be honest, it handles better than an F40 in the corners. It does. That's just a fact. And I don't know if I can say it handles better than a LaFerrari in the corners, but I can say I will push this car a lot harder in the corners on the roads than I will the LaFerrari for sure. So that results in me having even more driver enjoyment, driver enthusiasm, exhilaration, getting my adrenaline pumping and flowing more in this car than even in the LaFerrari, because I get to use every bit of it, and with the 600 horsepower, I get to take it to the very, very limit. That's why we work hard. That's why we make the sacrifices, so that one day you can own something that makes you feel like this. And with that being said, let's get back to the gentleman's garage, and I'll give you my final thoughts. Nope. Actually, we got time to send it one more time. Now we can get back to the gentleman's garage, and I'll give you my final thoughts. As I said in the video, we're headed back to give the final thoughts. I was going to take the long way here, and yeah, I spent about another 25 minutes driving the car because it is that great to drive. And so, you know, this car, when we talk about it, and again, you guys are going to watch this video and realize I don't spend a lot of time talking about the numbers or the specifics of the car. I talk about the way the car makes me feel, the way I experience this car, with the emotions that it invokes in me, and the enthusiasm, the excitement that it gives me as driving this car. This is one of those cars where when it all really comes together, as Ferrari did with this car, there's no number to point to say, oh, this is the greatest. He thinks it's the greatest modern Ferrari because of its 0 to 60 time, or it's got this horsepower, or this torque, or the steering rack is set up with this way, or the camber and the suspension set up exactly this way. That way. No, that's not it at all. That is not it at all. This is not even the fastest car of its time. You think about, I right about the time or shortly after this car came out. I'm trying to remember, the McLaren 720S came out. A lot more horsepower, a fantastic driving, handling car. Actually rides really, really well as well. Even the guys on Top Gear were enamored at how great the ride quality was on the 720S, and I would agree with them 100%. But that car being even faster, and I'm using the McLaren as an example, but I could talk about the 488 Pista that we have, Pista Aspire that we have, even faster car. But this car, that's not what it's about. It's not about the numbers. It's not about horsepower. It's not about any of those mechanical setups or differences of this car. It's about how this car, all of that came together, and the experience that all those elements that have come together to make this car handle and drive and respond the way that it does. And at the end of the day, that's what their driving experience is really all about. And that's why I spend so much time talking about the way this car, the senses that it invokes in me, or the senses that it instils in me, and the way I feel, the responsiveness, the communication of the car, the confidence this car gives me, and the way I can use every single bit of this car to the maximum ability, the sound of the car, all those things lead this to being in all packaged together, the absolute greatest driving Ferrari of modern times. At the end of the day, I think that's what this is really about. That's why I'm bringing these videos to you guys. This is far beyond the numbers that you read in a magazine or look online and see all the different numbers that they list out on a car. That doesn't tell you the story of what it's like to experience that car. And when you experience this car, when you experience everything coming together, it's far beyond the numbers. In fact, I struggle to even remember what the numbers are on this car, but I can tell you exactly what it's like to drive. And that, at the end of the day, is what makes this the greatest modern Ferrari for me.